Greetings, YouTube. LMS Tactical here. I hope everybody's doing good. So this is a video that's going to be long. I'm just going to warn you ahead of time. It's going to be long, and I'm using an Osmo camera. It's like a GoPro, and it's connected to my phone so that I can record it. So I probably am going to get some phone calls and things, and I'll have to just deal with that when they come in, because I'm not sure if I put it on airplane mode if I can still be connected. So I'm not that technically savvy. So I hope everybody's doing good. And this is a video that is not going to be easy to do. And, I suggest that you probably listen to it in parts, because like I said, it's going to be long, and, maybe listen to it when you've got a long drive or something. You don't have to watch it. Just listen. And there goes my messages. I wonder if I can turn those off. We're just going to be getting a lot of beeps in the video. There's nothing I can do, but I don't feel like messing with it, and I got limited time. So I've received a lot of requests after my last video of people that want to hear the story of my father and my mother and that kind of situation, because, people are... we're all going through our own inner struggles. I mean, no matter how successful we are, no matter how impoverished we are, I've been around the world. I've been involved because of my career as a retired Los Angeles police officer. I've been in a lot of homes, both very, very poverty-stricken and substance abuse and domestic violence and blah, blah, blah. And I've been in the movie stars' homes, and people that you would recognize, and where they have everything. They're living in the Hollywood Hills and mansions, and armed guards and limo drivers and all the money you could ever think of having, and they're just miserable. So one of the things that I've come away with as I've gotten older, and I'm 56 now, is that and this sounds like an obvious thing, but it's very important, especially for you younger people that either have young families or are thinking of having young families. One thing I've learned that seems obvious, but it really hits home as you get older, is that, all of our childhoods, all of us, the way we were raised and the things that we experienced at a young age plays such an integral part of who we become that, as a parent, I was aware of that. I've raised 7 kids. So I've got, identical twins that are in their 30s, a daughter that just turned 30, 2 stepchildren, and 2 adopted children. So I've gone through it, and I always tried to do everything opposite from the way that my life was. And the caveat here, or the disclaimer, before I get going, is this is not a poor me, I'm a sad guy video. There is an issue that I'm dealing with as a result of it. But, I really, all things considered, wouldn't change my experience and my background for anything, because, the experiences we have, good, bad, or otherwise, that's what makes us who we are. So I'm pretty happy with who I turned out to be. I could use some improvement in some areas, of course, but, I wouldn't change it. It was a rough upbringing, but I'm sure, in America, we have a lot of South African listeners here. And anybody that's, not a kid in America remembers a very famous case where the Menendez brothers, these were the sons of these 2 very wealthy people in Beverly Hills, had everything, Lamborghinis for their birthday and blah, blah, blah. And for whatever reason, they ended up blowing their parents away with a shotgun, and now they're in prison. But, they had all these excuses, and ultimately, of course, the dad allegedly was molesting one of them. I never believed that. But it's just one of many examples of how somebody who is seemingly living life beautifully and has everything that you and I could never dream of will still find a reason to be fucked over by their parents. I mean, you end up with kids with daddy issues because you weren't there, you didn't love them enough, you were too busy working to keep a roof over their head, or you loved them too much and you sheltered them, and you were there too much and they didn't have their freedom. So there's just no winning in some areas. all of that aside, I'm going to give you the background, and then at the end, I'm going to tell you what I was just dealing with regarding the last video. And you don't need to watch that one because I'll explain it here. So, I'm going to try and go as fast as I can. A brief background on who I am and the setting for who I became. So, I'm the youngest of 4 kids. I have 3 older sisters. One of those sisters is a full sister. The other 2 were half sisters. Same mom, different father. So the other one was like me. We were like little redheaded kids. Sandy was her name. Now, her and I, of course, were the closest in blood and just the way we grew up close, very close together. My mother and my father never married. And my mom was married to the first sister's dad, but they never stayed together. So, I was born in Glendale, California, which is it's like a suburb of Los Angeles. I don't remember any of that. Now, so I was born in 62, and in the 60s, of course, you had the Vietnam War going on. There was a lot of turmoil in America, and there was the big hippie movement and the bikers and blah, 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 and it was free drugs, free sex, fuck everything that moves, and that was kind of what was going on. And my mother was, full on into that, She was, yeah, and I feel guilty talking about her. I really do. I mean, this is the dilemma. It's part of the problem is I feel bad talking bad about her. But you know what? This might help somebody who's grappling with a similar situation, like I said. So please don't hate me because my life's an open book, and I do that on purpose because I think that if we go through bad things or good things, we should share them because other people might get something out of it. So that's my motivation here. So my mom was a typical, drug-taking, hard-drinking, hippie. Back in those days, I mean, any marijuana was illegal and it was like a felony and blah, blah, blah. Well, we were always in poverty, so my mom wasn't working. We were on welfare, so we got food stamps and blah, blah, blah. And we kind of rented a house in an area until we got kicked out, for not paying the rent. And then we kind of moved around. And we were always in the really bad areas because that's where poor people go. And where my memory starts to come in, and it's very sporadic. I honestly don't remember the majority of my childhood. And that's probably a good thing. Because I do have little flashes of a scene here, a scene there, and as much as I'm morbidly curious, I'm smart enough to kind of figure out what the outcome was of the rest of the movie, so I don't remember it, and the things I remember are bad enough. Now, my mom, we ended up in a place called Inglewood, California, which is, that's more of an African-American black area. It was kind of a poorer area by the time I got there. And so we lived in this duplex, and that's really where the violence and the bad shit started. Now, my father was out of the picture. I mean, I never really knew my father until I was like a little bit older. And even then, I never called him dad. He was just a strange guy that would pop in and out, a couple times a year at the most. Maybe once a year, twice a year, whatever. So, in our house, my mom, she associated with some really scary people to me. I was this little snot-nosed, redheaded kid, and the guys that were in the house all the time were like these huge bikers, and there's many of them were Hell's Angels from a motorcycle club, and they would hang out in there, and my mom was taking every pill she could, and she used to, when I was a kid, I would call it a tired mood because I didn't understand that it was drugs until later, and I used to wonder why my sisters were so they could tell, my mom would sober up for like one day, and then they'd say, and I'd be so happy, and they would say, get ready, Michael, mom's going to be in a tired mood tomorrow. And it was just like a fucking, like the weight of the world hit me, because what I didn't realize was they knew she was scoring dope, and that she would do this mixture of uppers and downers, and so she'd be awake for about 3 to 4 days nonstop, but really fucked up, slobbering, slurring her speech, peeing her pants, passing out on the floor, running around the house naked, going outside, fucking kicking us out of the house, fucking, it was a nightmare. Now, the people that took the worst of it, I was the youngest, so the ones that took the brunt of it were my sisters. And when I say they took the worst, I mean it was full on felony fucking abuse, physically and psychologically. My mom was a big woman, and she'd fight guys, and she stabbed, my dad's got a scar on the back of his shoulder from her stabbing him, and she stabbed the other one, my sister's father, chased him around down the street naked. It's just like a nightmare, like a Jerry Springer on fucking steroids. And so it was very scary for me. I mean, the house was a fucking nightmare, total mess. No food to eat. Any food that she got was basically, she was a really good cook. My mom was a fantastic cook. But when she got real food, she would cook it up for these bikers and shit. And, my sisters and I'd eat a baked potato, or more often than not, it would be a bowl of Captain Crunch, a little cereal. And that's what we lived on, was sugar. And it's a wonder I have any fucking teeth at all. And I've got a mouthful of fillings because, I wasn't doing the best at hygiene and shit. And it was like a typical fucking poor guy. So my mother absolutely despised two things. She despised cops. Cops were pigs, and they were not the good guys. She fucking hated them. And, if a cop got killed and it was on the news, she'd be cheering. She also hated the military because there were all the Vietnam War protests going on. And, as I got a little older, she would catch me playing soldiers or something, and she would beat the living crap out of me. I mean, soldiers were baby killers and fucked up and blah, blah, blah. So, of course, when I left the house, I immediately joined the Army, became a paratrooper, and then after that, I joined the LAPD. I mean, from a little kid, I knew that anything my mom didn't like was probably the right way to go. So, my sisters were just, I could tell story after story. I mean, I'd be outside playing. I remember one time I came in, and Shelly, the middle sister, she's laying unconscious. Now, this is like over and over, this kind of shit happened. And I ran, and my mom's sitting there out of breath, and, there's shit's overturned. There's a big fucking brawl going on in there. My sister's laid out unconscious. And I run over to her, and I'm like, Shelly. And my mom says, get the fuck away from her. I'm like, but Mom, what if she's dead? Fuck her. And she deserves it, And I'm like, wow. So that was a typical thing. My beautiful sister Sandy had really long red hair, and I can't count how many times I saw her swung around by her hair and getting. My mom was not a slapper. She'll punch the shit out of you. She would also pick up a weapon. And, you could literally, I've seen my sisters get beaten unconscious for doing this. Like, if my mom was motherfucking them, and as they walked away, they would go, man, if you did that, you're fucked up, man. You're probably going to the hospital. Now, in today's rural society, we would have all been taken away by children's services. My sisters would go to school, and the nurses would see them all bruised up with their eyes black and shit, and they would ask if everything was okay. And, of course, my sisters would lie, and that was it. Nobody ever made a call. So, my oldest sister, Cindy, she's probably watching. Hi, Cindy. She watches these videos. She ended up in foster homes at a very young age. So I don't have a lot of memories with her. Her and I are close now. But, she's suffering the residual effects of that life like you wouldn't believe. She was abused in these foster homes, as you can imagine, and I won't go into her story, but it's pretty fucking bad. My other sister, Shelly, would run away and blah, 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 and finally she ended up going to live with her dad, and so it left Sandy and I. And, I mean, in those days, a lot of different shit happened. I think I told the story once. I have a video up here. I think it's called "A Black Guy Saves a White Cop's Life" or something like that. And I just gave it a cool title to try to suck people in. But that was about the time. I won't tell the whole story, but as an example of the insanity, I got a bike. Every bike I ever had got stolen. I got beat off of them, and you can't imagine what it was like a piece of salt in a pepper shaker growing up over there. And one time my mom drives into the heart of darkness, man, and into like Watts, which was not that far away from where we were staying, because a bike got stolen. And all these fucking crips come up to the car. She's this drunk white lady with her fucking double D tits hanging out, and she pulls up. She's driving my grandpa's car, so her dad's car. Can you believe this pussy, man? He fucking let somebody steal, the bike and blah, 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 blah. You know what? Get him out of here. Just pull him out and beat his ass. Teach this motherfucking pussy, about life. And I'm thinking, this is it, man. It's the end of my life. And these guys, pull me out of the car. I'm laying in the street. My mom drives away. And, I mean, can you imagine that? I must have been fucking 9 years old, I guess. I accepted death at that moment. That has a really good ending, by the way. A big black parolee guy saved my life, man. And that story alone could be a book, and I often wonder where that guy is, man. I thought about him. I became a cop and was working in that very area, and I used to think, my God, man, whatever happened to that guy. So there was that kind of shit. The guys in our house were Hell's Angels. I mean, you'd wake up in the middle, and I was a common. I'd come out of bed to go to the bathroom, and there's a guy with a Harley Davidson literally in the fucking front room of the house. And he's rebuilding the engine. Long hair, muscles, stinky, fucking, patches on the thing. And be like, hey, little fucker, hand me that monkey wrench, And I found out later my sister Sandy had been, molested by some of these guys because the house was just full of fucking druggies and bikers and just terrible shit. And I told the story once before on another video about why I became a cop, and I don't want to tell the whole story because it's going to take away from the other. But the cops kicked the door in one day, and they came in. They were looking for one of those bikers, and man, when I saw that these bikers that I feared so much were afraid of these cops and how neatly they looked so in their uniforms, and everything was so neat and clean, and my life was so fucking unorganized and such disorder, that as this little kid sitting there watching these guys. Sit down and shut up, motherfucker. And the guys would do it, And they were kind of manhandling these bikers that I feared. I made that decision right there, and I was young, man. I must have been about 5 years old. And I said, man, I don't know who the fuck these people are. I don't know where they come from, but that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I did. And yeah, man, I kicked in many doors and come in and seen little snot-nosed Mike sitting there wide-eyed, wondering who the fuck we were. And I've pulled him aside and I've tried to tell him these stories, a little bit of that story and about how you take charge of your own life and get the fuck out of a bad situation. So I could tell stories all day long. I won't. And my dad's coming into this in a second. But my sister Sandy, sadly, I mean, she really, really, you know how girls are. And she really wanted the love and approval of our dad, of our father. That was important to her all her life. And there were some things that had happened, and she kind of went, my other middle sister, Shelley, been in and out of jail and blah, 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 and doing all kinds of shit, man. I mean, ended up being a stripper and just some really bad shit that I won't tell the details because hers is another movie that you wouldn't believe. And in fact, there is a movie out about one of the people she was hanging out with that ended up involved in some major quadruple murder. I mean, it was a very famous story out in LA, but I'll let it go at that. She wasn't involved in it, but she was living with the guy that was the main dude. Sandy, who was so she was a genius academically. She really righteously passed the Mensa test. She was like a really smart kid, but just very socially awkward, never really knew how to love or love herself. And as a result of all this shit, and You know, I remember on her 18th birthday, man, she came down there. A car honked a horn, and she came down the stairs. My mom, of course, wasn't talking to her because they're always hating each other. And she had a suitcase, man, and I was like, almost had a heart attack. And she said, "I'm sorry, Michael, but I gotta go. I can't live here anymore." And it was at that moment I was like, "Oh my God, man! Now I'm the last target, man. All the other targets are gone. The beast is gonna turn on me," and she did until I got the fuck out and escaped to the army. But that was a lot of shit happened between there that day and the day I left. But poor Sandy, ended up being involved in some forgery and that kind of crime. She wouldn't hurt anybody. She was a good person, but she was a hustler, and she had an alcoholic, and everybody in the family is a fucking alcoholic. So that's I don't drink. I don't drink a drop. You know, I drank when I was in the army and a little bit when I was a cop, and I haven't drank in so many years. I don't even know how many. So because I realized I didn't want my kids to see me like that. I didn't ever want them to see me drunk and fucked up, so they didn't. So Sandy, we ended up going to. She was a singer, and she ended up going to New York to run from the very police department I was working for. I mean, there were wanted pictures of my sister in the fucking division that I worked in. I still got a couple of them. It's depressing, but I couldn't talk to her because I was pulled in by the command staff. Hey, if you know where your sister is and you're not telling us, man, that's insubordination. That could cost you your job. And at the time, I was feeding a family, and I was terrified of doing the wrong thing, and so I put the word out through my mom. Hey, man, tell Sandy I can't talk to her, because I used to talk to her all the time. And then one day there was a call came in from New York, and something just told me, man, just take it. And it was Sandy in New York, and we had a pretty good talk. And the LA riots had been on, and she was talking about how she had watched it on the news and was telling all her friends, hey, my brother's out there. She was very proud of me. She was very, very proud of who I became. And, she told me on that call, she said, I'm so proud of you. And we finally got one in there, she said. And what she meant by that was out of that whole fucked up family, one of us got out of that shit. So at the end of that call, it was weird. It was about an hour. And I was telling her I love her and goodbye and blah, blah, blah. Don't ask me why I said this. It was a great call, but I said out of the blue, I said, hey, Sandy, you're not going to do anything weird like kill yourself, are you? And she said, oh, give me more credit than that, Michael. And I think 2 or 3 days later, she jumped out of a window and fucking killed herself. So that was a sad thing. And I'll bring that up in a second because okay, so my father, now I'm gonna promote him. I shouldn't, but my dad is a jazz musician. He's like 84 years old, and he hasn't had the best life based on his own decisions, though. He had a great mother and father, my grandpa and grandma. Of course, his mother committed suicide as well, so that's another genetic thing that I got to worry about with my kids. But so he spent his whole life mastering the clarinet, which is a very hard instrument. But it was back in the days where it was a genre of music called bebop. It's like an American original jazz type shit, not like the Kenny G shit that you listen to. So he spent his whole life mastering this, and by the time he mastered it, there's like 5 people that listen to it. So he's always been a little bit bitter about that, and it's he's made like 5 albums. I produced one of them actually just a couple of years ago, and you can go on if you Google Mort, M-O-R-T, Weiss, W-E-I-S-S. Google that name and you'll see YouTube videos of him. He wrote a lot of articles where he talks about ending up in a nut house, all the drugs he did and how he lived homeless. He was on the streets and blah, 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 and drove an ice cream truck and fucking on and on and on and on. He's got an interesting life. He worked as my dad says, any clarinet player can play a saxophone, but a saxophone player can't play the clarinet. So the money to be made was on the saxophone, and he made money in Vegas doing that, and he had his own shit going on. So ultimately, though, he buckled down and he married my stepmother, and they lived in San Clemente, California, which is a very upper class area. It's like President Nixon lived there. And they lived in this beautiful home, and you could see the ocean and Catalina Island, and they had a yacht and different boats they bought, and he would race the yachts to Mexico and back, these big grand yacht races, and he'd get 2 cars every year. They'd trade in the car and get another one. Now, she had kids, and those kids were all academic geniuses. So he basically took on that family, and for all intents and purposes, Sandy and I just didn't exist. Sorry, Dad. I know my dad's watching this, but you know what, man? I can either lie or fucking tell the truth, so let's tell the truth. So, my father's father, Grandpa Weiss, Sidney Paul Weiss, was the greatest man I've ever known. And he loved Sandy and I beyond belief. And he never let a month go by where he didn't come and take us somewhere. And who I am is, I give 100% credit to my grandpa. I mean, it's hard for me to talk about him without breaking down and crying. That's how much I love him, because he would do things like every month was a new adventure. We never knew what it would be. He took us to everywhere. Disneyland this month, next month some other place, the zoo, the animal thing, the aquarium, the tar pits. This is how cool he was. He took us to the criminal courts one time, and we spent the day watching trials. And he loved this country. He was a Jewish man, and a practicing Jew, like my father. My father's side of the family, they're Jewish. My mom was Catholic, and I was no religion. I was raised without religion, so I ultimately became a Christian as an adult. My grandpa would pump things into my young head from the minute he saw us. He'd bring us, toys and clothes and shit. All the clothes I had, my grandpa bought us. He bought us school clothes every year, and he would say something like, these are quote, my grandpa just driving along, we're going, and he would take us out to eat a great big meal, and he would say, Michael, always obey the laws of the land. Always respect your flag. Remember, we're a nation of laws. We follow the laws. Otherwise, we have chaos. And he took us to court, and some defendant would come out and he'd say, you see, Michael, he doesn't have rights. He's not free. Because he didn't follow the rules and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I was a voracious reader at the age of probably 8, because my grandpa had signed me up for this thing where books would show up at my house, and the I Can Read book club is what it was called. First book I ever read in my life was Danny and the Dinosaur. So I couldn't spell dinosaur, but I could read at a collegiate level, very young, because of my grandfather. So rest in peace, Grandpa. But he would insist that, I see my dad at least once a year. And so we would go down to my dad's, and you talk about uncomfortable. Imagine coming from a house of violence and drugs and vomit and blood. There were fights and the police showing up. And we go to this fucking, what we thought was a mansion with beautiful decor and matching silverware and this new cars, and we didn't even have a fucking car half the time, and color TV, which we didn't have that, a full refrigerator, and it was so awkward for us. Sandy and I, my dad was more, he wasn't dad to me. I didn't know the guy. So that has confused some people. I just got an email today from an old sergeant of mine, man, from the LAPD. He was like, you heard you talk about your family and how fucked up things were between you and your dad, but I see pictures of you. You got more pictures of you and your dad on these nice places than I do of my dad. Well, does a picture tell the whole story? You know, if you look at, I posted a picture once and I said, check out the body language of those kids. And it was my sister like this, my dad's arm was around her, and I'm like this, you know, because we were fucking, it was like being with a total stranger, you know, and then we'd go back home to hell and see him in another year. So there was no relationship at all. And, you know, my dad admits that to me all the time. That's nothing new. He didn't know me. To this day, I'll say shit and he'll be like, holy fuck, man. You and I were separated so long. I just don't, I'm learning who you are right now. You know, he's amazed that simple things amaze him. He thought I was this little weak, pussy, snot-nosed, fucked up, poor, impoverished kid who was going to go to prison and die. And he can't believe that I've been all over the world and fucking met with Scotland Yard and fucking, you know, was in charge of security for on the railroad side for the presidential inauguration under Obama, and working with the Secret Service and fucking this, that, and the other thing, and went to Israel and it's all shocking to him, you know, and that's leading to this whole thing that brought this up. So finally, you know, I asked my mom. I said, hey, look, you know, I was 17. I said, if you sign the papers, I can go to the Army. She said, fuck you. I ain't never fucking gonna send anybody to the Army. Fuck the military. So I had to wait till I was 18. I signed it. Bam, I was gone. You know, so the whole childhood, my mom's, these are phrases that are, I hate to use the word trigger, but they really are triggers. All of the kids were losers. You're a fucking loser, 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 loser. That's why I don't fucking like that word. The other thing was, you know, you fucked up my life if I didn't have you motherfuckers, you know. I mean, my mom kicked me out of the house when I was about 5 years old. Said, just get the fuck out. Go find your father somewhere. And I'm walking down the street at 3 a.m. with my fucking pajamas with feet on them, and the fucking cops found me, and it's just a miracle I'm still alive. That's another long story. I've told that one, I think, somewhere. So, fast forward. I go to the Army, figure out who I'm trying to be, looked at personalities around me and kind of adopted, hey, I like the way that guy looks you in the eye when he talks. I like that guy's handshake. I don't like this. I like, kind of built who I was, because I was just this lost soul. I'd never been on an airplane, never left anywhere, never left LA. Second time I was on an airplane, I jumped out of it with a parachute. I was in jump school. So I started making some achievements myself, but don't kid yourself. The self-esteem on me to this day is fucked up. That's why I can't take compliments. People, hey man, you're really doing a good thing for those Africans. I'm like, it's really nothing, because I'm not used to being complimented, and I feel like I don't feel right. I don't like it. So these are just some of the residual things that go on. And some of you can understand what I'm talking about. You know, you start making successes, you know. I mean, I'm living in a house that's like a mansion compared to where I grew up, and I still wonder if somebody made a mistake somewhere. Maybe I fucking slipped through the cracks. You can't ever give yourself credit when you're fucking called a loser so long that you feel like maybe I didn't earn everything, you know. It's really fucking weird. You know, and the more, side note, the more successful I got in life, I mean, I've owned like 7 houses. I was the first person in the family to have a brand new car and to own a house and to blah, 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 you know. And every fucking thing that I got made my mother hate me worse. She's fucking hated me, man. You know, I would show her, hey mom, here's my new car, my new truck. And her quote, nobody ever gave me a new truck. And I'm like, wait, what the fuck gave this to me, man? It's called getting off your ass and going to work. Fucking bought my first house. Hey mom, look, I got my new house. Nobody ever gave me a house. What the fuck? She was a sense of entitlement, man, that you just can't fucking believe it, man. But this is, you know. So, I go in the Army. Now, when I come out of the Army, I go stay with my dad for a little bit. We start communicating big time when I was in the Army. He was proud of me now. I'm in the Army. You know, I know my dad's going to get his feelings hurt. This is my fucking story, and this is how I fucking see it, man. My dad, in my mind, and I think he's told me before, I wrote you off pretty much when you were younger. Figured there ain't no hope for this motherfucker. Well, once I had jump wings and a maroon beret on, and I was looking good, my dad took a real big interest in me, and he was proud of me. You know, hey, my son's a paratrooper. And I started to develop a relationship with him at that point. So that happened. And then, sorry, I got a little distracted there. So we started to get to know each other awkwardly. But I started to go on boats with him. You know, I'd go on his boat with him and race to Mexico and that kind of shit. But it's always a little bit of an awkward situation. I mean, we were never close at all. And then I became a police officer, and then my dad was really fucking proud. He's kind of a frustrated cop, you know. He is an admitted cop group. He belongs to all these cop sites, and he'll post pictures of me as a cop. And there's probably 5 pictures of me with him in uniform, and he circulates those around. And suddenly, I mean, it wasn't lost on me that all of a sudden he was, very proud. All of a sudden my picture showed up in his, he owned a couple of music stores and blah, blah, blah. I was doing really well. And all of a sudden now, and I always wondered, if I was a fucking good citizen, but like I was a manager of a hotel chain, or a hotel, I don't think my picture would be up, but let's not get too petty, right, Mike? But I noticed shit. So I get married at a very young age. Get out of the army, get married. 21. Have first kids are twins. Second one's a daughter. I was married for 20 years. So as we're coming up, I ran into some pretty big financial problems. And my ex-wife was really good at keeping that from me. And, I'm not dumping it on her, but she would not tell me that things were, she would be paying the bills, and I assumed everything was done. Hey, is everything done? Everything's paid? Yeah, everything's good. So I come home from work one day, and I was working 2 jobs many times, man. I mean, security at the Bonaventure Hotel, I was in charge of that, and I'd get off work and go to work. So I was doing my thing, and still was a Cub Scout leader for the kids, and run home and take the boys places and fucking soccer games, parenthood. Loved it. But I come home one day, there's a note that was on the door saying, hey, your house is in foreclosure, you got 5 days to get out, or the marshals are going to come. I'm like, what the fuck? So I call my dad up. And I mean, the first time. And I'm like, hey, Dad, I'm in some serious trouble here financially. And I'm wondering, if you could float me some money and I could make payments back because I'm going to lose my house. And he said, well, you know what it sounds like? You should have planned your life a little bit better. Click. Hung up on me. That fucking click. See, this brings us to what's going on now. And that was all backstory. Now let me bring you to the here and now. At this point in my life, my father ended up, they had a little ranch in Texas, and here he's been married for 40-something years. His wife just divorced him out of the blue. And he's an old guy, and he's got medical problems. He had nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. Fucking, so, I tell him, hey, man, move in with us. So he moves in with us, and that was not a fucking good thing, because we were really bumping heads. I mean, my dad he's a very demanding guy, He would literally come downstairs in the morning, go get a pen and paper, here's what we got planned for the day. Now, he had been telling me, hey, I'm low maintenance, you'll never even notice I'm there. Well, man, he was ordering me around like I was this fucking bitch, and I got the wrong fucking personality for that. And so that exploded. I was like, hey, man, I ain't your fucking employee. So we ended up, he got a place just literally walking distance, nice apartment. And all of a sudden, he's on the needing end, He couldn't afford things. He couldn't afford to live, his medicine, blah, blah, blah. He's on a fixed income, Medicaid, Medicare. It's like it reversed, He's on fucking food stamps. Him and I like switched places. Sorry, you get stressed out. And, now it's me fucking paying, he needs money for the rent, he needs money for this, he needs groceries, and that's okay, I do that, that's fine, my wife and I are good with that. But little fire burns deep in the belly. Now, anytime my dad, and I don't ever ask for it back. Now, I had borrowed money in the past from my father after that other situation where he hung up, and he would hand me a contract that was written out like it was written from an attorney, and he would say, this is the amount of interest you pay, this is your monthly payment. I'm not bullshitting you. So if I borrowed $1,000 from him, man, I'd be making payments, and man, if you were late with a payment, man, it was like the IRS coming after you. Now, I got kids all over the fucking place here, all over this country. I don't keep track. I couldn't keep track of the amount of money I've fucking given. I don't loan people fucking money, especially family members, but that's just me. Uh, but now, I'm not getting money back from my father. I wouldn't take it back. And he always is like, I'll make payment. I'm like, Dad, shut the fuck up. I'm not going to take your money. And, thousands and thousands of dollars are going out. I don't have that kind of money, but I make it happen. And, but each time I can't help but hear this, hey, you should have planned your life better. Click. And so that fire starts to turn into a real rage, and yeah, so he ends up living out here, and this fire's burning, but there's also this desire to really get to know my dad. My dad is a good man. See, that's the thing. He's got a really good side to him, but he's also a very competitive guy, and we're like from different planets. He's competitive with me, so he'll say shit like, well, one of the ones that set me off was, I should have been a cop, but if I would have been, I would have been a commander. Well, that's telling me, like, yeah, I could have done what you did, but I would have been better at it. I told him the other night, I said, that's like me going up to some guy playing a clarinet on the street for money, and me saying, hey, I don't play any instruments, but if I played the clarinet, I'd be better than you, I'd be famous. What the fuck kind of shit is that? Hey, doc, thanks for being a brain surgeon, but if I was one, I would have been a better one. But this is an example of how my dad thinks. It's there's like really no empathy. Let's face it, the guy doesn't know how to be a father. I mean, that's just fucking that's the truth of it, man. Everybody can fucking have kids, but he just doesn't get it. He was an only kid, and only kids are. I'm sorry for you only kids, but many people that are fucked up were only kids. Because they don't realize how to fucking get along with people and how to empathize and put yourself in their place. So I don't have the personality for it anymore. I can take more shit from a stranger than my own dad. Because now that I've raised kids and I realize what it's like to change diapers and get puked on and fucking sit in hospitals all fucking night and worry and fucking get off work after 14 hours and go to a fucking football game and go to a fucking a play. A Thanksgiving play, a Christmas play. Now that I've done all that, I quite frankly, I told him the other night, I just don't think you've earned the right to fuck with me and to be rude to me. Yeah, you're my dad, but I don't think you've earned the right to fucking shit on me, man. And that's why I don't take it. So, back to the present, what happens is, every time my dad and I used to, before the South African family got here, because our house is pretty full now, he would come over about once a Friday, and we would watch these old movies and sit there, and it's really great. My dad and I we can talk on the phone and often do for 5 or 6 hours if it's about things like the speed of light, the origins of humanity, what's it all about, Alfie, sound, how does a human eye work? This is the shit we can talk about. But if we're talking about other things, my dad can, if I sense that he's jabbing me, I fucking get mad. So last story was, I had a very bad accident. I had 23 breaks in my leg. I've got rods and shit in my leg and screws, and I didn't walk for a year. I was in a hospital bed in the house. Bottom line was, I called up and I'm like, hey, and this is important for the story, hey, Dad, I broke my leg. It's really bad, man. I'm gonna, the doctors were talking about taking my leg, that could happen. I mean, it was really that fucked up. Year of terrible recovery, and during that whole thing in a wheelchair, then my ex-wife starts fucking around, and I had to divorce her, and so there was a lot of terrible shit going on. That's a miracle I survived it, because it came close. And that's why one of the reasons I moved from California out here was to save everybody else's life, including mine, because that's how fucked up things got. But I couldn't walk, so that's why it never got that bad. But, I've had 32 surgeries, and I never once woke up and saw my father standing there. I never got a visit. He was an hour and a half away. Never came down to see me. I'm in the worst time of my life. I can't walk, I can't shit without people helping me, strangers. My wife is left and gone with her boyfriend. And I'm sitting there with strangers coming in the unlocked door to fucking feed me. My dad never showed up. So I can't not notice shit like that, you know. This will be the last story. When I retired from LAPD, I had a great, big, huge surprise retirement party and blah, blah, blah. My father was invited by my ex. They come down. The chief of police was there, Chief Gate. It was a big thing. And I'm making a speech, and I introduce my father. I show him around, you know, I introduce him to the chief, which is, he loves, you know, the chief's dead now, but he was a big fan of the chief, Chief Daryl Gates. And then years later, when I'm recovering and I'm finally out of the wheelchair on crutches, my stepmom says, hey, your father's planning this big thing. It would be really important to him if you'd show up. So I go down there, man. I can barely walk. Take a couple friends. I'm sitting in this crowded place. He's going to play live. And he says on the stage, and this is just one of many things to let you know why this fire fucking burns. You know, I'm like, it was unbelievable for me to get out there and do this. And I got, like I said, I got a girlfriend with me and my other friend. And I'm sitting at the table, and he says, you know, somebody came a long way today to be here, and I just couldn't be more proud. And it's such a big thing that he's here. And it was like a movie. I start to stand up, and he introduces his stepdaughter's boyfriend or husband, because that guy's a world-famous fucking musician guy. Not only did he not introduce me, he never said a word to me that whole fucking night. Not hello, not thanks for coming, and not goodbye. That's fucked up. That's fucked up. So, now, lately, since he's been out here, I catch myself raging. He'll say something, man, and I start to just get really mean to him. You know, I pick on him a little, and I'm not proud of it. And it's to the point where, you know, he wears a Korean War veteran hat, which he is technically. He was in the Army during the Korean War. But he was in Germany playing in the Army band. But he has people thinking he was in Korea fighting the war, because he's like, yeah, I'm a Korean War veteran. Or I know all about freedom, you know, Korea. I'm a veteran. You know, and that just jacks my fucking blood pressure up. So I may bring it up and say, hey, so how was it fighting the Korean War in Germany? And just shit that upsets him, and it's like a revenge thing for me. And I know inside of me he's like, don't do it, Mike, don't do it. But I can't stop it. It rages. If he triggers me, I come at him like that. I called up my buddy Jim. Hey, Jim, thank you for that. And I was like, literally, just a couple of weeks ago, I go, Jim, man, my dad's not going to be alive too much longer, and I can't put this fire out, man, and I don't like who I am, man. Help me get the fuck. What do I do? Jim gave me an idea, you know, write down everything you hate about him and do a little ceremony and light it on fire and let it go. And I never did it because I've been too busy with what I'm getting ready to tell you. So all of this shit's going on. And here's what happened. The other day, this is why I've been off the air for a while. I'm coming home from, you know, I've got a lot of medical issues myself. So I was in D.C. at the VA. It's a long drive and heavy traffic. Twice. The next day I had to go back again. I'm coming home. I'm exhausted. I miss my dog Mason. I just want to get home and relax. And I'm almost there. I'm halfway home. And the fucking phone rings. And my dad goes, hey, it's me. I haven't seen this much blood my whole life. I dialed 911. The fire department's on the way. I'm going to be in the hospital. Now, my dad takes heavy blood thinners, so if he just nicks himself, fucking bleed to death. And he's had a couple of bleeding episodes, and, you know, of course I was going to go to the hospital. But the whole time I kept hearing, well, you should have planned your life better. Or picturing me waking up in the hospital and him not being there, nobody fucking being there. And so I started getting mad. Show up at the hospital, some capillary popped on his leg, no big deal, but it was spurting blood fucking 4 feet. It was a bloodbath, you know, he fucked up his whole apartment, just literally, there's a hazmat team, they gotta hack out the carpet, take out a wall. It's unbelievable. It looks like a homicide scene. And of course, when that's going on, he's gonna stay with me. I mean, I'm the rescue guy. I will always rescue my dad, but I'm bitter about it. That's the problem. And I don't wanna be. So we're in the hospital, and I'm trying to be a good son, and he's smarting off to me in front of the nurses, kind of condescending to me. And it doesn't take much. And I go radio silent, man. I'm just looking at my phone, and he'd be saying shit, and I'm like, yeah. You know, and he could feel the heat coming off of me, you know? And so I get over to his house, and I'm fucking cleaning the floor, I'm mopping it, I'm scrubbing, I'm vacuuming, I'm doing everything I can to make it livable, at least until the other people can change up everything. You know, I bought him a nice a Mac computer, and he doesn't know how to update it, so I was doing all that shit. Whatever. And as I go to leave, hey man, I love you, which he never says, I love you. And I've said that before to him. I'm like, the fuck? But I go to walk out, and I'm pissed, you know. And he goes, hey Michael, he goes, look, sit down, I'd like to talk to you for a minute. I knew what he was going to talk about. I said, hey, we'll talk, but if you want to talk about it, man, you're going to have to listen, because I got a lot to fucking say. And so we had a fucking come to Jesus meeting, and you know, I laid all this shit out for him, pretty much what I just told you, and things that he did that upset me, and how I do love him, but I don't like him, and I you know, because he's like, I know you hate me, but my dad being my dad, instead of fucking doing what I would did when my kids had issues, because I came to Virginia and they were out there, and you know, had to deal with that, instead of listening and empathizing, my dad will. When you tell him, hey man, this is what you did that hurt me, he'll throw something at you that hurt him. You know, he'll be like, you know what? This is an example he tells me the other day. He goes, I have one parachute that I can fall back on about that. First he says, I never knew what was going on in your home, ever. You know, if I would have known how bad it was. And I said, well, that's the problem, Dad. How could you not know? You're fucking less than an hour away from me. How about coming over once a fucking month and saying, hey kid, let's go get a hamburger? Maybe then you'd fucking know. So he says, well, I didn't know anything, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then he says a few minutes later, well, I got one parachute, and he's thrown this at me a lot throughout the years. And that is, I asked my wife, Jean, I told her, hey, we need to get Michael out of that house and bring him to live with us. And I called you, and I asked you if you want to live with us. And it was you, me, who said no. So I'm like fucking 12 years old when that call came in, because my mom had fucking tried to kill me with a fucking frying pan and shit. And he asked me to do that, to come and live with him. And I said no. Well, the reason I said no was I didn't know the fucking dude. It'd be like going to live with a stranger. And by the way, no matter how fucked up your mom is, you still love them, you know? I mean, I literally would think, well, if I left my mom, who's going to take out the trash? I mean, that's just me. I was 12 years old and fucked up. So I told him that, I said, let me cut that parachute of yours to shreds right now, because I'm tired of hearing that. Number one, if you didn't know what the fuck was going on in my house, why were you talking to Jean about getting me the fuck out of there? Something wrong with that story. And number two, you're gonna fucking feel comfortable because you left the fucking decision of the world on the shoulders of a 12-year-old kid who was already in a fucked up situation? That's like fucking looking at somebody that got raped and saying, hey man, well, you shouldn't have wore that dress. He's blaming me. I mean, unfucking believable. So we went back and forth and back and forth and back and fucking forth. And you know what, at the end of it, I mean, I've been trying to, look man, you know, I hugged him, told him I love him. He said he loves me. And I promised I would do better. And I would just try to put things to bed and, you know, spend whatever time we have together, you know, watching movies and talking nice. And my dad is, for the last couple days, you know, he'll send me a message, hey, I love you. And look, man, I don't know what the ending of the story is, but I know that others are going through this. Here's another thing, a side note. My chair is fucking sinking. With my mom, this will just tell you how fucked up my situation is. So 2 years ago, my dog died on, or my mom died on October 28th. I think it was October 28th. On October 31st, my dog, my golden retriever right here, Charlie, he died. I have not shed a tear since my mother died, and I feel fucking guilty about it. Dr. Phil, if you're out there, help me. I have tried and I've come close. I've forced a little bit of moisture once, but I can't get it out. I don't hate my mom, but I just can't cry. And it feels terrible. Now, I can't talk about Charlie more than a few minutes before I start crying. And I think about him and talk to him every fucking day, how much I love him, how much he gave to me, how much happiness and joy he brought to the world. And the worst part is, and I'll leave you guys, maybe somebody has an idea. I received 2 boxes on the same day. One was my dog's ashes, and the other one was my mom's. My dog's ashes are going to be buried with me, and they're up on a really nice thing with his collar, and it's, oh, I can barely look at it, but it looks gorgeous. It's in a beautiful box. My mom's ashes are still in the box they were shipped in, and they're sitting over there somewhere upstairs. And my mom never even had a funeral, nothing. And I have been for 2 years wanting to get in my little fucking canoe and row out in the middle of the Potomac River and put her in the water and put flowers there, and or maybe bury her. I don't know what to do. And my battery died on the camera there, so I had to change batteries. But yeah, so my mother sits in her box, her ashes up there, and there's a mental block. I can't put this thing to bed. I'm afraid, I'm afraid that if I go out there and do some kind of little ceremony, I'll actually cry, which I think I want to cry. You know, I joke around that when I walk by, I grab the box and shake it and say, who's in charge now? You know, but I don't know, man. I always look up at my mom and say, look, Mom, you know, I love you, but you're fucking nuts and you hated me. But my father and I are working through our problem. And so the end of the video is this. What suggestions do you guys have? What stories do you have? Are you going, apparently a lot of you are going through this type of thing. People's parents die and they have unfinished business. And I guess my message to you is work hard at kind of doing what my dad and I did and trying hard. I mean, I'm going to vow that I'm not going to fuck with him again and be angry. I'll try my hardest. Life is short. And I realized that my father, well, none of us are perfect. And my father did the best he could with what he had, and so did my mom. I wish my dad would have made better decisions, but I probably would still have complaints because that's the nature of humanity, it appears. So, you know, if you do have a living parent or a brother or sister, a spouse or a relative, or somebody that you're feuding with, maybe it's time to put that to bed and just have a sit down and just lay it all out. You know, that's what I would recommend to you. Thanks for listening. I'm sorry about the long video. If you stuck it out this far, give it a thumbs up. You can share it to somebody that's got a lot of free time on their hands or somebody that might be able to use it. In the meantime, hope you guys are doing well and take care of yourself and each other. LMS Tactical. I'm out.